Hello, happy Wednesday to everyone who's starting to join. We will get started here in just a few minutes, allow some more folks to trickle in and join us.
Just to check, you can only see the slides. You can't see the rest of the Zoom interface.
Yes, I can see the slides. I also see, I don't know if it's on my end, but I see a couple of interesting
there's a few options.
black boxes.
Share screen plus gallery view will show you the people as well as the shared screen.
Is that better?
Yes, I still see a couple of black boxes kind of in the upper section, but
yeah, that is the if I expand it, it's the gallery view of the participants and stuff like that. So
okay.
And it's not really blocking the slides at this point.
Yeah, I can still see the slide clearly.
Okay, there we go.
We'll give it just another minute or two.
Are others seeing the black boxes on the slides?
Yeah, there is one that grew in size and it's on the top right half. There.
There we go. That looks good.
Weird.
The joys of screen sharing. All right. Well, I want to make sure that we have enough time to get through all of the content, so we can go ahead and get started here. I know that we'll have some other people who will be joining in the webinar as we continue through, but this is all being recorded and will be posted online. So anyone who's missed part of the content will be able to view it after. But hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's IAM Online. This is our monthly webinar focused around identity and access management and is brought to you by InCommon and Internet 2. My name is Netta Caligari, InCommon Community Success Manager, and I'm happy to be hosting this hour that we're going to be here together. So just in a moment, I will turn it over to our fantastic moderator for the day. But just a couple of things to note. So we will be taking questions and comments during the presentation. Certainly, we want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions for our moderator or any of the presenters, you're welcome to place those in the chat. Just make sure that you're responding kind of to everybody so that they're able to see your questions, and we'll be monitoring them, throughout the hour. Like I said, we'll also be recording this webinar. It will be posted on our IAM Online YouTube channel, so in the next day or so. So again, if you've missed any information or want to go back and review, it will be available to you. All right, well, we have a really special session lined up for you today. This is really focused around the great work that's happening in our community and how all of you can get involved as well if you're interested. So without further ado, I'm happy to hand it over to Brad Kreis. He is the Associate Vice President for Information Technology and the Chief Information Officer at Eastern Washington University. And on top of all of that, because I'm sure that's a boring job, he's also our 2021 Steering Committee Chair, which provides high-level governance for InCommon and related community activities. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Brad.
Thank you so much, Netta. Again, please extend, I'd like to extend my welcome for everybody who has joined us. This is really, this was a suggestion from one of the panelists here today, was how can we let folks know that there are many, many opportunities to join an InCommon working group, or an Internet 2 working group, and we need you. We need your help. We need your participation. It's a very important part of what we do. And so today we'll just highlight the various groups that are looking for members. We're always looking for members. And so what the process is, how you can get involved and be part of the community. So who will we be hearing from? You'll be obviously hearing from me, but as well as Rob Carter from Cacti, the Community Architecture Committee for Trust and Identity, David Vance with CTAB, the Community Trust and Assurance Board, the TAC, Keith Wessel. So again, thanks to Keith for coming up with this idea for this webinar. And then finally, the Trusted Access Platform and the Software Integration Working Group with both Keith Hazelton and Ethan Cromholt. So what's the relationship? We have all those kind of acronyms. It's very much acronym soup. So here's kind of the relationship that exists. So as Netta mentioned, I am currently the chair of InCommon Steering. This is my second or third year on InCommon Steering, and then just though serving as chair for this year. Below InCommon, not necessarily reporting, but providing input and advice for InCommon Steering is CTAB, the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as the Trusted Access Platform. The Trusted Access Platform, if you've been using Internet 2 or Shibboleth or Grouper or Co-Manage, all of those pieces that one time were called Tier have been and are now part of TAP. So if you're not necessarily familiar with it, or you might not necessarily know kind of all of these acronyms. Then we also have the Internet 2 Trust and Identity. So that's a group within Internet 2 and below the Trust and Identity group. And Steering provides input and is a member of the program advisory group for Trust and Identity with Internet 2. We have Cacti, a very, very active group, as well as the Eduroam Advisory Committee. So again, many, many opportunities for you to be able to participate, many working groups, as well as advisory groups. So that said, what's the process? So the easiest one is on the right, a working group. If it's a working group, you just need to express interest and join, start showing up, and that's great. For advisory groups, so for example, Steering or Cacti or CTAB, there's a formal nomination process. You can certainly self-nominate. That's great. It won't affect your candidacy whatsoever if you self-nominate or if you find someone to nominate for you. Two, the second step would be selection. So unfortunately, not everybody who is nominated is able to be selected, but then there's an election. Step 3 is election by existing members. Not everybody gets in the first time, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try or find other opportunities to join working groups or otherwise participate in InCommon. So we really don't want to discourage people or disappoint them. We certainly want to get as many folks as we can going through these groups, because typically they are time limited, as well as sometimes people change jobs or they're no longer able to participate. So it's a constant recruitment cycle for us. We're always looking for new members on an annual basis. Speaking about InCommon Steering in general, what do we do? So this is a group that does actively look for members and nominations. So what do? We govern the InCommon LLC. So we can get into the formal nature of the relationship between InCommon and Internet 2. Probably not that interesting, but if you want to, we're certainly happy to get into it some other time. But what our goal is to promote the InCommon mission. A federation, identity federation. Why is this meaningful? Not only to CIOs and campuses, but also service providers and even research organizations, libraries, all of the folks who really care and need to identify, manage digital identities. But we establish policies for InCommon. We delegate authority as necessary to CTAB and other groups in order to research, work on new services, work on new offerings, work on baseline expectations, new types of practices for InCommon. And we do provide advice to the operations unit, ranging from billing issues to changing how InCommon conducts some of its business. So who are we? We're 13 members. We have staggered 3-year terms, and it's one-time renewable. So you can serve up to 6 years, and we do meet monthly in terms of the total commitment for InCommon Steering. Now I'm going to turn this over to my colleague to start talking about Cacti.
Cool. All right. Hopefully I found the mute button properly. Thank you, Brad. I'm Rob Carter. I'm from Duke University. I'm the current chair of the Cacti committee. So what is Cacti? We've said this a couple of times. Well, we're the Community Architecture Committee for Trust and Identity. And I thought it might be kind of fun if we drilled into that a little bit further in sort of Mouseketeer style. So we'll take us by the letters. The first C, we're a community advisory group. That's what the C in the beginning of our acronym stands for. We're a community advisory group. Our members come from the community. They're nominated by the community. And interestingly and importantly, we have a responsibility through our charter to be transparent with the community and to engage with the community about stuff that we think is important. We're an architecture group. That's what the A is for. Oops, did we lose the screen share? I think we lost the screen share.
We did, Rob, for a moment.
No problem. Just it wasn't sure if that was just me or if that was all of us.
Yeah, I just need to make somebody a host, so I will restore it shortly.
Not a problem. Well, I'll go on. So we're an architecture group. So we're mostly focused on strategic issues, right? Our focus needs to be and tends to be on high level architectural type things. The second C, the committee C, we are a standing advisory committee, which means we've got an open-ended charter. The group lasts until we're dechartered. Our membership are nominated for 3-year seats now, although to start with, some folks came in initially with 2-year seats in an effort to try to stagger things. And it's important to us to try to make sure that we stagger our rolling seats as much as we can. Our officers, the chair and vice chair, are elected annually for 1-year terms. So this is my year in the hot seat as chair. We also have the ability to charter working groups ourselves, and those working groups inherit the same responsibility to the community that we have, essentially. So they're responsible for making sure that they're transparent, that their meeting notes are published, and that sort of thing. And then finally, the T and the I, we were chartered not by another advisory body, but in fact by the Vice President for Trust and Identity, by Kevin Rooney himself. And we report to an extent to that position. It also means, because we were chartered by Trust and Identity, or by the Vice President, that we have a fairly broad scope that spans beyond InCommon, which is a little bit different from some of the other groups. So our scope includes things like Eduroam and the Trusted Access platform that aren't necessarily and have not always been InCommon branded products, but they're inside Trust and Identity. So our advisory role is to Trust and Identity as a whole. Can I get you to flip to the next slide, please? Thank you. So who are we in terms of actual people? Well, you can see here what our current membership is. We currently have 14 voting members with a 15th ex officio member. It's Matthew Economou, who's our representative, sort of crossing over from the TAC. And our other 14 members are voting members. We've always striven, and we continue to strive, to have as broad as possible a set of representative members from inside the community. And as you can see, we've got folks from a pretty broad sweep through the community. We've got representatives from both the US and some international organizations. We've got representatives from higher education and commercial, as well as from federation providers, as you can see on the list there. We've got folks from large R1 schools like me. We've got folks from smaller colleges. We've got folks who aren't even directly involved in higher ed or research per se, but in the case of John Bradley, have a close relationship with the community for other reasons. So if you look closely, you'll see stars next to some names on the screen there. You can count that up and maybe realize that this year, about 50% of our membership rotated in. So half the people who are in Cacti this year have been working with Cacti for less than a year at this point, which is a kind of interesting thing for us. I think we're hoping to stabilize our membership rotation a little bit in the future. But for now, at least, we have a number of new members with us this year. So next slide, please, if you would. All right, so what is it? Thank you. What is it that Cacti does? What are we chartered to do? So our charter specifies 7 primary duties for the committee, and they're outlined there on the screen. Above all, we provide strategic architectural input to the Trust and Identity program inside Internet 2. That's our primary focus. And we also provide that same input to the VP for Trust and Identity who chartered us. We're also given the authority, as I said before, to charter and manage community working groups where it seems like that's important or warranted. And as I said before, we have a responsibility for managing them as well as chartering them. We also inherited responsibility for a number of community standards, things like schemas and APIs from one of our predecessor organizations. Some of you may be familiar with MACE, that was one of the predecessors of Cacti. So as an example of the kinds of things that we do with this, the EduRoam Advisory Committee, which Brad mentioned in the introductory remarks, was actually chartered by Cacti. That's one of the groups that Cacti chartered and continues to have, I won't say oversight, but continues to have a relationship with. And we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about what we've been doing the past year or so. Cacti also was inherited, as I said, from MACE, responsibility for the EduPerson standard. And one of the things that we did back in the early years of our existence was sort of shepherd the transition of the EduPerson standard from Internet 2 management to REFEDS management. So that's another sort of facet of that management of and evolution of community standards in our charter. We are strongly admonished throughout the charter to share information both nationally and internationally and across sectors within the higher ed and research environment. And in pursuit of that, we're directed to publish all of our proceedings and all the proceedings of our subordinate or chartered organizations, and also to participate in support and support education and outreach efforts. So that's sort of the big picture of what we're about, what we're supposed to do. Next slide, please. Thank you. So given that, what have we been doing? I mentioned that Cacti chartered the EduRoam Advisory Committee, and this year the EAC released the first ever US EduRoam Best Practice Guide. We were very pleased to get the opportunity to review that Best Practice Guide when the EAC got it put together. We had a meeting with EAC leadership and they came and presented it to us. We were glad to be able to give them just a little bit of input, mostly things like, oh, put a comma there, simple changes like that. Overall, the Best Practice Guide was a wonderful document. We're really pleased with the work that they did with that. I'm going to thank them for that, since no one from the EAC is here to present today. Some of you may also have participated in last month's IAM Online. The August IAM Online was a thing that Cacti actually presented on securing trust. If you haven't seen that, small plug for going back and looking at the video of that if you're interested. That's a topic space that we continue to be actively involved in and we're actively exploring. We recently had a conversation with the co-chairs from REFEDS of the Federation 2.0 effort, which is looking at where REFEDS sees sort of global federation going in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a pretty far-flung sort of view of things. That working group is continuing their work. They haven't published their final results yet, but we expect that when they do, Cacti may get an opportunity to write recommendations to the Trust and Identity program in response to the REFEDS Federation 2.0 report, which is something that we actually did. It's similar to something that we did a few years ago with Cacti in responding to a similar report done by the FIM4R group, the Federated Identity Management for Research organization wrote a report that Cacti wrote a response to. So this is another sort of thing that we'll likely be doing in the near future. We think we're going to certainly continue our exploration of the ways that things are evolving in the environment around trust and identity. As we see organizations starting to further embrace cloud services and cloud delivery of services, we're very interested in sort of finding out what people are doing and then looking at what the Federation and what trust and identity in general needs to do to try to support folks doing good work inside clouds in this sort of new migrated to the cloud world that we're beginning to find ourselves in. So we think that's something we're going to be working on a lot in the near future. And as we do, we expect to be chartering some working groups, at least one, possibly more than one working group, to dig into some of the details of that. And so we'll talk about that in a second. We hope in another month or so to have a conversation about discovery services and seamless access, which I think is going to be an interesting topic for us to chew on for a while. And you can sort of see the rest of the topics that we've been discussing there on the screen. So next slide, if you would please. All right, so with that as background, this is what we've been doing. How can you get involved? If you find that interesting or compelling, what could you do to get involved? Well, as Brad said earlier, nominations are coming up for all of the advisory groups. We will have at least one and possibly two or more seats rotating out or coming open for 2022. So you might consider nominating someone or nominating yourself to become a member of the Cacti group. As I said a minute ago, we're also looking at probably chartering some community working groups. And when we do that, we'll put out a call for participation. By all means, if you're interested in what the working group is working on, come join the working group, pitch in and help us talk about this stuff. And then finally, if you haven't already, think about registering to join us at TechX. I think there are going to be a number of conversations, particularly in ACamp, but there's at least one presentation that Cacti will be a topic during at camp in the first half of the week as well. But if you don't feel like you're quite ready to commit to spending time with a working group or spending time in the actual advisory group, then come join us at Camp and ACamp at TechX in October. And with that, I will hand it off to the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Rob. And just in time, now we will turn it over to CTAB and David Bantz from the University of Alaska.
Thanks, Brad and Rob. So the Community Trust and Assurance Board is charged with increasing the value of the InCommon Federation to all of its participants, and to do so by increasing the level of trust among the participants so that participants can rely on Federation data and Federation links to other entities rather than having an unscalable problem of trying to establish trust with lots of different entities. So the core of the work of this board is to shepherd a community consensus process. You're the boss. The participants of InCommon are the beneficiaries as well as the owners of the Federation in a sense. And we try to move ahead by establishing some consensus on new or evolving standards. So the most prominent way that you've probably encountered our work is through the baseline expectations. What are the minimum expectations we have of all participants to be in InCommon that facilitate increased trust and interoperability among participants? The secondary role for that community consensus process is to address disputes if and when they arise. So there's a well-articulated process for addressing a dispute among participants as to whether they're meeting their obligations, such as baseline expectations or any other issue. So we, of course, coordinate with the InCommon Steering Committee that Brad chairs, with InCommon staff who do 95% of the work behind the scenes and aren't always on these calls. And within some international federations, we have on CTAB, as on other committees, members from the global research and education federations. In case of CTAB, I think we have 3 members from Europe on our team. Next slide. So we're always trying to balance the needs to increase the expectations, increase what we can do with the InCommon Federation without, as it were, scaring off people and making requirements that are too difficult for too many members to adhere to, but needing to continually evolve things like baseline expectations in order to keep the value of the Federation high enough to warrant participation by participants who have high value services. Brad, I think you.
David, you're
One
cutting
back.
out.
Huh?
Did
There you go.
okay.
So this is just an image illustrating different kinds of expectations and requirements that we're coordinating within CTAB. Baseline expectations include providing the services that you run as an institutional service with appropriate governance. First year's baseline expectations involves getting completeness to metadata for participants in InCommon, and we're on baseline version 2, V2, right now, in which we're getting people to adopt common good security practices, such as adherence to certify and the like. And in the future, we anticipate some broad consensus on how to use MFA and identity assurance, two slightly different topics, and standardization on the release of attributes, which is probably the most difficult. So I'll stop there and note, of course, that like the others, we are looking for participants. We're looking in particular for a very broad and representative collection of people on the board, small institutions, large, research-based, government, other research labs, global research and education library. I think we have currently expressed a need in particular for people who run service providers. We have several people familiar with being identity provider operators, and we would like more people running services. I'm going to pass it off next to, who am I passing it off to? TAC, Keith Wessel.
All right, thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm the chair of this year's TAC. And what is the TAC? If you heard us throw around that acronym and no one ever told you what it stood for, that's the InCommon Technical Advisory Committee. And we are a committee under InCommon steering, much like the CTAB. And you see here from this first slide, there's actually a quote from the InCommon mission statement. And this is really all about trust framework, and making the Federation work. And we approach that from a technical standpoint. If you want to read more about our charter, the link is on this slide. Help yourself. If you want to read in depth of what the TAC does and how it works. But specifically for the purposes of today's presentation, what we do, as I summarized here on this slide, if it's about the Federation, then we probably advise on it. And who do we advise? We advise steering. We advise InCommon operations. We make sure that the technology is working, that it's meeting the needs of the participants. That's you all. We make sure that we stay on top of the emerging technologies that are coming along and how they might impact the Federation. I'll be touching on that in a little bit. And we produce deliverables that help to advance the Federation and the technology that's involved in making it work. But at the end of the day, our role is advising steering to make sure that they stay up to date on what InCommon is doing well and needs to keep doing and needs to be doing differently and needs to be looking at in the future. So the current members of the TAC, we have 10 folks this year. Our charter allows, I think it's between 8 and 13 seats to be filled. And that just kind of ebbs and flows. We have 10 members right now. We do have a few seats that will be opening up for nominations for next year's TAC. I wanted to point out we have one InCommon staff member on this slide. I wanted to actually call out Albert Wu, who is our InCommon. The term that we use is flywheel, but that means he is our liaison to InCommon. And Albert's the Federation manager. If you don't know Albert, he's pretty awesome. And also Heather is my vice chair this year, and I'm going to pass along Brad kudos for the idea for this this particular IAM Online topic because it was her idea. So thank you, Heather. So what we've been working on this year, this is really why I wanted to present this IAM Online to get this out of what our work plans being, because we want to make sure we're being transparent with the community. And we also want to make sure that the community knows that they can bring things to us. If there are technical issues that aren't being addressed or things coming down the road that need to be addressed, you're welcome to approach the TAC. We are happy to hear from you. So some of the things we've been working on this year, these are taken directly from our work plan, which is a public document. If you haven't been hiding under a rock for the last few years, you've probably heard something about the SAML 2.0 deployment profile. It was a multi-year effort. It was ratified last year internationally by the Kantara initiative. If you're not familiar with Kantara, feel free to go look them up. And it's helping to standardize interoperability between IDPs and SPs to make Federation work better. So now that this has been ratified, InCommon has been closely, and the TAC specifically has been closely looking at this document to figure out what needs to be done to help to apply it to InCommon and make InCommon even better. You're going to be hearing from us over the coming weeks and probably months with how that's all going to happen. We're actually working on packaging that up into a nice digestible format on the InCommon wiki that we'll be communicating out probably before camp. So more to come on that soon. One of the items in the deployment profile, and this is sort of a longer range item that we're dealing with, is newer subject identifiers that address some of the shortcomings of the existing subject identifiers and try and clean up a long-standing mess. Thanks to Scott Cantor and Scott's on here today, for leading the way on helping us pioneer new subject identifiers. There has been some talk internationally on getting the ball rolling on these. InCommon has been talking about it within the TAC and elsewhere. And we will be communicating out more specifically on what these new subject identifiers are and how we plan to get from where we are now to there. We've started some sort of early planning within the TAC this year on that. Another thing related to the deployment profile is Federation testing. We originally were going to approach Federation testing from a bigger picture. We've decided to narrow the scope on this to simply testing compliance with the items that InCommon is adopting from the SAML deployment profile. There will be a working group spinning up on this, and we would love some participation. There will be more details coming out on email and through other channels on that in the probably the week or so before camp. And we'll be getting that going shortly after camp. If you're interested in helping us with this working group, this one, you don't need to be nominated and elected. Working groups, anybody can join, and is welcome too. If you want to help us with figuring out how the automated testing, both for folks wanting to evaluate their own IDPs and SPs, and for folks wanting to, or pardon me, for the Federation wanting to make sure that participants are compliant, those tools and those, if you want to be part of that, we encourage you to join in that group. And then just a couple other items from our work plan this year. You've probably heard about seamless access, and we've been looking at seamless access very closely and other angles of centralized IDP discovery, and trying to figure out how InCommon should perhaps adopt those, or what direction we should move with the centralized discovery service that we've been running for quite a while, and that maybe it's time to evaluate new technology and see if we could be doing something better. We'll be producing some more information on that before the end of the year. You've also probably heard about many of the browser technology changes that have been coming along, many of which will have impact on Federation if not handled properly. So the TAC has been monitoring those closely. There's been, outside of InCommon, some working group efforts to stay on top of those, figure out what direction things are going, and make sure that we're not going to break Federation as a result of these. The good news is, thanks to some folks in higher ed and attention of Google and Apple and others who are driving this, and hopefully there will be a happy outcome. And then if you're not familiar with the HECVAT, which is the Higher Ed Community Vendor Assessment Toolkit, I encourage you to just do a Google search for HECVAT, find the information on that from the REN-ISAC website. I think that's the best place to find it. There's also some information from EDUCAUSE on it. It's exactly what it says. It's a toolkit for assessing how well vendors will work in the higher ed space. It didn't address SAML at all. So we have gotten some communications going between TAC and the group in charge of the HECVAT, the HEISC. Don't ask me what it stands for. I don't remember off the top of my head. I did good enough remembering HECVAT. And we're working to get SAML best practices and metrics, if you will, addressed in the HECVAT. So that's a taste of what the TAC does. That's what we've been busy with this year. We would love to have you get involved. And of course, like I said, we'd like to hear from you. InCommon is all about the community. And like the title of this webinar suggested, you can be the boss. You can help drive things. So our minutes are public. You're welcome to check those out on the InCommon Wiki at any time. Provide any feedback you have on anything we discuss in the public minutes. You're welcome to join our working groups. I mentioned the Federation Testing Working Group. There will be others in 2022, and we would love to have your participation. And then, as the others have mentioned, elections are coming up soon for next year's advisory groups. If you'd like to nominate yourself or someone else, there will be an opportunity to do that, and you can be part of this or one of the other advisory groups. And you're welcome to contact me directly if you have any questions or want any more information about any of this, with my email address on the slide. And Brad, who am I supposed to pass it to from here?
You can pass it along to me. Thank you so much, Keith. Now we're going to turn it over to the other Keith and Ethan to talk about the Trusted Access Platform, or TAP, and the Software Integration Working Group.
I am Ethan Krumhout from UNC Chapel Hill, and I joined Keith as a co-chair to the Trusted Access Platform Software Integration Working Group just about a year ago. This working group has been around for quite some time. It was very active throughout the tier project as we were coming up with what the Trusted Access Platform would contain and what would be a part of it, and what problems it would solve. The working group focuses on say component integrations and implementations, what I mean is it's how the different trusted access platforms work with each other, how they communicate with each other, what functions are best utilized in which component, but also how those trusted access platform components integrate with campuses and with people's real world implementations. So we encourage people to come to the meetings, share something that they succeeded at, something that's working for them, or just, here's a problem that I'm having trouble with a trusted access platform component, or with integrating that with, Got Help You PeopleSoft or something like that, and sort of design considerations. So here's the way the IAM problem I'm trying to solve at my university. Which of these components really make sense for our campus to implement? Particularly during the tier days, we spend a lot of time also talking about component packaging. So, what are the Docker containers that are going to be created to make rolling out the trusted access platform as simple as possible for people? What technology should those containers be run on? How should they log, or things like that? And then we also do a lot of sort of demonstration work, just to say, here's the way you might plug Grouper and Midpoint together, and then demonstrate that application messaging flow so that people can see how that works. Sort of necessary to the fact that what we do is a lot of the integration work. We end up focusing on schema, data structure, APIs. Basically is, how do the components talk to each other? How do the components talk to other things you might have in your university environment? We communicate pretty regularly. So there's a mailing list that probably has the least amount of traffic on it. Then we chat on Slack quite a bit, and we have weekly calls. Next slide, please. So yeah, a little bit different. This has been mentioned a couple times, that the working group doesn't have a size that's set by its charter. It doesn't have a nomination process. It's more, are you interested? Please let us know what you're interested in, and we'll get you added to an agenda and have you come and join. It's really open to anybody in the community who wants to participate, and often the quality of the discussion is better as we get a large number of participants. So we definitely do encourage people to join. We get topics to work on from the committees. So sometimes one of the more formal InCommon committees will have an idea or a process that they'd like to see vetted out or discussed with a broader range of campuses. And it's kind of easy for us to do that within the context of our working group. But then also, as I mentioned earlier, people are doing implementations. They may need some help troubleshooting. They may just want to show something, but that's basically our agenda gets created, from basically the membership itself, or these committees, or the mind of Keith Hazelton, which comes up with a lot of great ideas for agendas. So it's definitely an open and welcoming environment. So I was definitely shy coming into the working group, but I have really enjoyed participating. It's a place where we will encourage you to share and let us know what you need help with. And we do these meetings, like I say, they're weekly, but it's what it is we meet every other Wednesday at 3 p.m. and every other Friday at 10 a.m. And part of the reason we do that slightly weird scheduling is to make it a little bit more inclusive for people who are in different time zones. So we encourage, people on the West Coast not to have to join at 6 or 7 a.m. People from Europe not to have to join at 9 o'clock at night. So that's part of the reason for that division. And I've got a link here that I think these slides will get posted to, where there's a wiki with more information about the working group. But I'm also going to pass this along to Keith Hazelton to talk a little bit about some of the specific things that we're working on or planning to work on. And he'll probably do another plug for getting more people involved. So with that, Keith, can I turn it over to you?
Please do. And if you'd flip the slide to the next one, please. So I thought I'd give people at best, I guess, a sampling of the things that we've been up to, and then talk a bit about things that we have decided really do need some attention and conversation within this working group. So one of the major areas of effort actually for this group and for the TAP Architects Inside Internet 2 as well is, and with help from Evolvium on the outside, doing a really good job of integrating Grouper and Midpoint, two of the main components in the TAP suite. And the logic there at the highest, most simple level is that Grouper is the tool that is just right for managing across all systems, IAM and outside, managing access and policies, and which affiliations should get which services. Midpoint is strong suit is definitely in the area of registries on the one hand and provisioning on the other. So essentially you could think of it as Grouper saying, here's who should have what, and then Midpoint goes and makes it happen by connecting to those various external systems and generally making sure that the data is in sync. There's one kind of state of data across all of the systems in the IAM space and systems that use IAM data. So that's continuing. There's another round of work going on now to do that. Another one is more generally in the area of how we connect our systems. Again, Midpoint in this particular case, by using a framework for connectors between IAM infrastructure and services and resources, either local or in the cloud. And this is called, currently called the ConID connector framework. And basically there, I'll guess at this point, probably 2-3 dozen different systems that have connectors people can download and then configure to be able to read information in and provision back out to the various systems from your provisioning agent. Some more work in the, I guess, standardization space, trying to reduce, if possible, the variation between us in terms of how we represent information, is this, what we're calling an attribute dictionary. It's a description of normal attributes that you might care about, name, address, what your class is, what your employee code is, giving you a standardized name and place for that attribute. And if you're pulling together some new identity schema, we encourage people to pull from this and then map down to whatever on the wire format, whether that's LDAP or OIDC or SAML attribute assertions. That's a second step, but we figure if we can get at least some high-level agreement on what the attributes, quote unquote, are and what they mean semantically, then that's a big step forward. We've also defined an API for a very critical step in the whole IAM space, which is the identity reconciliation or the identity matching. Laura talked about this to some degree earlier. Again, the notion is to come up not with a particular solution, although we're working on a reference implementation of that as well, but really to come up with an API that can standardize across those various implementations. And the ideal would be then that you choose the implementation you want, but even if you're switching from one to the other, the API will still be shared, so there'll be less work to do the integration. A smaller sort of reference material kind of activity we've conducted is to put together a resource page on things like event-driven messaging, pub sub tools, and protocols. There's a lot of churn in this area over the last few years, but we wanted to try to put some material together for people just getting into this, and also, keeping up with the changes and the new capabilities. Upcoming and ongoing, there are a number of folks in our community with using Banner, and another large member, not completely overlapping, of places using Canvas for an LMS. So the notion of coming up with some standardization work or connector work between Banner, the student information system, and Canvas, the LMS, has gotten attention from us in the past, but we've recently recommitted ourselves to enlivening that and revisiting it, and to begin to include into that course and roster integration into the picture. That seems to be in the near term work map of a lot of places. Thing that we're looking at with great interest is a project coming out of Duke Unlock, to help integrate the whole story between multi-factor authentication, open source, getting away from passwords, if as people are realizing that's a direction we need to get to, and then integrating that all with SAML and Shibboleth in particular. So we'll be tuning into that presentation they're doing tomorrow, and maybe Rob or one of the others could post a link to that in chat if they're willing. I think that's going to open up, a lot of advances in that area. Another area where it would be great if people had some trustworthy advice they could turn to, and that's in the area of how do you manage if you're doing all this containerized stuff and you've got your applications out in the cloud or whatever, how do you keep your passwords safe and your API keys and things like that? So it generally falls under this notion of secrets management. And that's something that we've got some experience with now. What we need to do is consolidate our experience and write up some guidelines for folks so they don't have to start from scratch and learn it all themselves. That's one of the benefits of this kind of group, is you bring a problem and ideally we'll end up with a community solution. Clearer guidelines, this is something that's been on request for quite a long time now, is to get some clearer guideline on deployment choices and options and trade-offs, because there's overlap in the functionality from one TAP component to the other. So people are wanting to get some guidance on how to think about that. What are the trade-offs? What kinds of, we always say it depends. And I think we owe it to people to say a little more about what does it depend on? What about my case? What does it depend on for me? So working on that. And then there's, again, the ongoing challenge of just making sure that as Midpoint new releases come out, co-managed new releases, Grouper, SHIB, we need to update our packages, our integrations, so that they still work. And so that's a kind of definitely an ongoing area of work. Again, as I said, it's just a sampling of the kinds of things. And please remember that we turn to the community to help us pick what kinds of things are high priority to work on. Thanks for moving to this slide. I'm just reinforcing and giving links to some of the things that Ethan mentioned. So we do have these weekly meetings. That short link there will take you to the top of the meeting notes for the last several weeks, and then we have archives of the meeting notes that go all the way back to end of 2015, and in a different incarnation of this group, but nonetheless, it's all the information is there. So currently our 3 p.m. meetings are on Fridays. The next one coming up is a week from this Friday. And then the 10 a.m. meetings are on Wednesdays. And the next one is the Wednesday, September 29th, that follows the Friday meeting. So you can sync up with that, and then it's every other week. The mailing list is a great place to sort of look in at what we're doing and then participate. Yeah. if you choose. Once you get involved in that or in one of the meetings, you'll no doubt be invited to or informed of a bunch of Slack channels as well. But just to start, I would say hit this link. You'll be taken right to a page that allows you to subscribe to this InCommon Trust SI for software integration mailing list. So please do that. That's, I would say, plenty from us. And we can turn back to probably the host for now and go from there.
All right, so thank you so much. I want to extend my thanks to Rob, David, Keith Hazelton, as well as Ethan, for their participation and an explanation of what they do and the work of all of these various governance groups and working groups. And so you can see that there's an enormous amount of activity that goes on, and we do need participation. We want community participation. We frankly wouldn't be able to move along or do the things that InCommon and Internet 2, Trust and Identity, and other programs, all of that work really, depends on, community involvement, community engagement, not only from a governance perspective, but also just participation, getting the work done. So certainly we get support from folks like Albert and InCommon and, folks who do work for Internet 2. That's very, very important, but at the same time, it's supplemented. We just wouldn't be able to do the things that we're able to do without the active participation of the community. So again, thank you for coming today. I'm going to turn this back over to Netta for a few closing remarks, and then we will see you on the rest of your day. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone who joined us today. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides here so that we can kind of wrap up and give you next steps. So in terms of nominations opening soon, we are going to be posting on our leadership site the nomination form and additional details about how to submit yourself or nominate somebody else in the community if you think others would be interested in joining in. Nominations will close toward the end of October. We'll be sure to also have with that nomination form kind of the deadline so that you're aware of what we're doing in terms of wrapping that up and then having the committees review the information that was submitted. And then we'll be doing outreach for everyone who has submitted their nomination form. We'll go to the next slide in just a minute, but a great place to think about joining in or getting involved is Camp Week. That's October 4th through 8th. And so if you have any questions around, is this right for me? Should I get involved? Where do I best fit? We can certainly get you involved and have some conversations around nomination time during Camp Week. And then of course you can reach out to us if you have any questions or comments. So specifically with Camp Week on the next slide, like I said, that's October 4th through 8th. CAMP stands for Campus Architecture and Middleware Planning. Hope that you'll all be able to attend. Really, the first 2 days of camp are great, where you're going to hear from folks that are subject matter experts in the identity and access management space. And then we also, during the last 3 days of camp, have an unconference. So with the unconference, you're actually kind of driving the bus in terms of the sessions and the topics that are proposed. So it's a really great opportunity to just really get involved with the community, come hang out with us and learn more about what we're doing and actually have a voice in the space. So all are welcome. We'll make sure that you get a link there to sign up, and we hope to see you at camp. And then just to wrap up on my last slide, before we close out, again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to Brad for moderating and for all of our panelists here today. If you enjoyed the session here, then we would love to hear your feedback, or if you have other feedback for us as well. When you close out of Zoom, there will be a survey for you. So within that survey, you can just kind of say if you how you felt about the content that was presented for IAM Online in September. And then we will be back, of course, next month in October for our next session. So thank you again to everybody who attended. Again, we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel and more to come soon. Thank you. I'm just letting people trickle out. So if anybody needs to bounce, that's great. But thank you, everybody. Great job today.
Annetta, I corrected the times on my meeting. Ethan noticed that they were flipped. The dates are correct, but it's Friday is 10 a.m. Eastern and Wednesdays are 3 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully people will look at the agenda before they actually show up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I hope so. It's all good.
Rob, I hope you didn't mind me herding a bunch of cats towards your show tomorrow, but I think it's really good stuff. So,
Oh no, thank you. And it's actually Mary's show, so I thank you from Mary for herding cats toward her show. But it's cool stuff. We love it. It's great to see that you guys are gonna drill into that from your end, because I think it would be it'll be nice if we can eventually get that sort of mainstreamed. If not our code for it, then somebody's code for it at least. But something to do the 502 stuff would be beautiful. So
yeah, absolutely.
Really,
I
really
put the
excited
link in
about
the,
that. That's good work.
Yeah, I threw the link to the talk tomorrow into the chat, but I don't know if everybody got a chance to see it. First, I threw it in for just us, and then I realized, we probably don't need to hear that. So,
You know what I can do? Let's see. I can probably paste it into the slide deck. I think I still
there's a
have
good idea. Yeah, that'll make it more permanent.
when they come back. Yeah, well, yeah. They probably won't see the slides. Maybe, let's see, what could we? So Netta, is there an appropriate IAM Online mailing list that if we sent that link saying, if you want to attend Duke things, here's the link?
I don't think that there's a specific IAM Online
Right.
email, but we send it out to, so we have our like general events list, and then we also have, I think, a place where we can post the slides on the website, and we email out to the participants listserv, the IAM EDUCAUSE listserv, and then the security one is where I sent it out. So we can resend it out to the 3 of those if we want.
That's fine. I'll send it to the InCommon Trust SI one to
Yeah.
cover all the bases. All right.
Yeah.
That should
Cool.
get all the cats.
All right, well, I guess we can, unless there's anything else you want to discuss, we can hop off. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate your time.
No, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks.
Running it so well.
Talk with you later. Bye.
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 Take care.